All right, a little while ago, we did a video on the top jobs in the trades that you should probably consider getting into and the ones you should probably avoid. And we got a lot of great feedback from that, a lot of interest, and a lot more questions. And people asking, what about this job? What about that job? And I realized that there's a lot of questions about a lot of the jobs that are in the trades. And what we're going to cover today, which are what we like to refer to as trade adjacent or semi-trade kind of jobs. Today, and we're going to be doing a whole series on this, but today we're going to be covering a lot of these types of inspector kind of jobs. These are semi-technical positions where people can get into, and honestly, you'd be surprised how easy some of these positions can get in, or it is to get into, how well they pay even right off the bat, and how secure you can be in these jobs, because a lot of them are coming from a situation where there's federal regulations that these inspections just simply must happen, and there's not enough inspectors out there to do it. So if you can get the credentials to do it, you can pretty much, write your own paycheck based on how much you want to work. So let's jump into it. I think we got three different categories we're going to talk about here. The first one is construction and building inspectors. Now, these are just the basic ones, all right? The first one is your basic building inspector. They check new builds, they check for code compliance, not just new builds. Also, if you were doing like when I was in construction, we would do rebuilds on houses, and as long as we didn't do more than 70% of the house, it wasn't considered new construction. Now that's going to vary. All these regulation stuff are going to vary state by state and sometimes even county by county. So you need to check your local codes and stuff. But these are the people when you're building something new or when you're making major renovations, you got to have somebody come out and sign off on it and say, hey, you're doing everything right. You got the receptacles where they're supposed to be. You're using the right kind of materials and you're being safe. So it's one of these things where business can't happen unless these guys sign off on it. Now, what you're going to need to get into, you're going to need a community college certification or prior construction experience. Again, it depends state by state. Now, the pay range on this starts around $70K and easily goes up to $100,000. And a lot of people then spin this into something where they're doing this as their own business. And again, anything you can ramp up into your own business is something I personally always suggest that people do. Working for yourself is just the best way to do anything, trust me. All right, electrical inspectors, very similar to what building inspectors do, but these are talking specifically about electrical stuff. Now, they are often going to have to be licensed. A lot of times that they are people who went the route of being an electrician and either are retired from that and want something more light work, or they wanted something that they didn't like doing the electrical work. They didn't like doing all that kind of stuff and leaving piles of debris because they don't sweep up after themselves. Anyway, there are, again, different areas have different requirements. So it may be that you need your full electrician certs. In some areas, it's a 6-month course. And these start off, again, at $75,000 to $110,000. And there's the same thing also with plumbing. You have the same kind of situation where you usually get people who are formally in the trade itself, but oftentimes, depending on the area, you may be able to take a 6 to 8 month course to get certified for this. Now, these are people who are doing inspecting for plumbing, HVAC systems, gas systems, and whether they're new buildings and remodels as well. They don't pay quite as much as electrical does, maybe about 10% left. Or less. All right, let's talk about residential home inspectors. We talked about building inspecting. Well, this is, usually new tract housing kind of stuff. You see large tracts going up, people building whole new communities and stuff like that. And this one is a rough one. Honestly, though, it feels like the building inspectors just walk through and sign off and get paid. So if it's good work, if you can get it. But the ones who are really good at their job, honestly, you may not even get as much work as the person who's just kind of skims over. Depends on who's paying for the inspection, I guess. Anyway, 3 to 6 months for a cert in most, I would say most states, honestly. A little bit of some require some college, but never like a full degree or anything like that I've seen. And you're looking at, they start on the kind of low. I would say 55,000 on up, but I know home inspectors who've been doing it 3-4 years, they're making well over 100,000. And again, it's another one you could spiral off into your own business. And the next one we have is energy efficiency and green building inspectors. These are inspections for businesses and buildings where they have to meet local regulations to get their green cert. It varies by state, but it's the cert that says, hey, we are doing better than other people when it comes to utilities, and we've got more insulation, we've got solar, we've got high efficiency HVAC, we've got blower doors and stuff like that, and all these things that are going to help keep this company more green. And then this one's going to really vary. You're going to have to find out in the certain regions and what those local utilities work with as well. Training via BPI and ResNet programs is where you're typically going to see this. The pay is not bad. It's about 70 to 100,000 for starting versus somebody who's been in for a few years. Now let's talk about another category here, something a little bit different. This is manufacturing quality and industrial inspectors. These are more, I don't want to say in-house, but people who are working with large industries and stuff like that. You have quality assurance. People are going around and basically they're taking a look at stuff that's being produced or manufactured and making sure that the welds are there, the dimensions are there, things are being done to, the standards, whatever standards it is that company is using. Now it's going to be more technical. You're going to need some, not just some background, but also usually some employer training as far as that goes. Now the pay though, honestly, you'd think that with something like that, with those kind of requirements, it would pay better. Honestly, it pays about 60 to 90,000 a year. Welding inspectors. Now these are people who go out and do certs on welds, whether they're running on pipelines or gas or any place where it's vital, where the connections really have to be done well. You're going to need AWS, CWI certifications, and some experience to go along with it. Again, it's the kind of trade or semi-trade where it's usually somebody who's been doing welding for a while and then transitions over to do welding inspecting because they want some more light work. This one does pay fairly well. Actually, it pays probably as good as a lot of welding positions, although you don't often get as much overtime and stuff like that. So you're looking at 75 to 125,000 a year on that one. Then you've got CNC inspectors. All right, they're using micrometers, calipers, CMMs to verify all the tolerances that machines are running accurately, that the parts are being made accurately, that the policies and the procedures are being followed. Usually it's done as an in-house training. It's a little harder job to get. In fact, it takes about 6 to 12 months of training to get qualified for this. And the pay is probably kind of like right around with the CNC operator, right around 65 to 95,000 a year. Now remember, I get a lot of feedback when we talk about how much the pay is. People are like, well, where I live, they're not getting paid nearly that much. And then I'll get people saying, where I live, they're getting paid way more than that. Remember, this is an average across all the United States. We're not all talking about people who live, in the middle of Manhattan doing this, where, they've, a studio apartment will run you $5,000 a month, okay? There's cost of living adjustments based on where people live. A lot of people live, in the middle of Arkansas, where it's a lot cheaper. I just saw a 40-acre ranch for $300,000. So you got to understand there's a broad spectrum in play. All right, coatings, paint inspectors. All right, NACE, SSPC, ensures protective coating and paints meet spec. It's pretty much exactly what it says. When people are putting on coats and paints and protective coatings, someone needs to sign off on it or make sure that it's being done. They do quality testing. Random testing, usually though it's like, they have periodic testing, like it's, X amount of times per year, they have to be certified for this. And you're going to have to take the specific NACE and SSPC kind of cert courses. But the pay on it, honestly, for what it is actually pretty good. You're looking at 80 to, I think I saw numbers up 120, 130 for somebody who's been doing it for 2 to 3 years and really, built those connections at that point. And then we got, pipeline pressure and vessel inspectors. These are people who go in and put pressure on pipelines and verify that they can hold, gas pressure, water pressure, oil, whatever you're putting in it. They have to certify and make sure this thing is going to hold it. So someone's got to sign off on it. And this is something that has to be done every so often with the pipeline stuff. It has to be certified. Again, it varies by usage and by state and stuff like that. But you're going to need the AP 510 and something. I remember the other one is 18510. There's 2 certs in this. And the pay on it is pretty decent. It starts around 85,000 once you get your certs, and then goes up. And a lot of these, honestly, you'll actually get a chance to start out at like a 50, 55 range, and then once you get your cert, you'll get bumped up because they can give you more work, the higher end work. At the beginning, you'll be doing a lot of the, assistant kind of roles and small jobs kind of stuff. And then once you get certified, you'll get the full jobs, and that's when your pay really jumps up. Anyway, I don't remember, did I say it was 85 to 150, I think. Then we have mechanical safety and utility inspectors. Sorry, I've got notes, but I clearly haven't written everything down. Now, these are the guys who are supposed to make sure that you don't get killed when you're using the equipment or doing whatnot. The first one is, and we talked about, in the last video, we talked about the people who repair elevators. Well, once an elevator gets repaired, it has to get signed off again. When it gets installed, it has to get signed off. Once a year, it has to get signed off. Any major changes, it has to get signed off on. There's always people signing off on the elevator stuff. And honestly, they make almost as much as the technicians themselves. Now, you usually have to, this is one of the jobs where you usually have to start as an assistant and then get the certifications on the job, as it were. But usually starting is 65 to 75. And then, again, once you're in that kind of journeyman status up around 5 years, you're looking at, was it 130, 140 even? They make good money for, because people have to have elevators and they got to get somebody signed off on. And if you run a building where people are using those elevators and they're just sitting there, they've been fixed, they can't be used because you're still waiting for someone to sign off on it, they will pay good money to have somebody come out there and take a look at it, all right? Fire and life safety inspectors, all right? These inspect sprinkler systems, alarm systems, extinguishers, stuff like that. A lot of people don't realize that if you have a business, you have to have someone come out and check your extinguishers and stuff, pretty much every year. Because if you don't, and the fire marshal comes by, he will not take kindly to that. Ask me how I know. Anyway, you have to get certified usually through the fire department. NICE, I want to say there's not an R in there. NICET. Sorry, there's a lot of acronyms out there, and these guys make 75 to about 110, 120 a year. It's, again, if you're doing like sprinkler systems and stuff like that, it is, you're crawling up, you're getting in crawl spaces, you're doing a lot of, it's dirty kind of work, It's not like super hard, it's just dirt. I don't like going in hung ceilings and stuff like that. But that's it. If you could set up a business where all you do is have a circuit of fire extinguishers, you can go. And I'm saying this because I knew people who did this, and what a job. They just drive around in a little sports car, hop out, go in, go, yep, it's good, yep, just what a scam. Anyway, it's good money if you can get it. How about that? Utility pole power line inspectors. Now, usually this is something that's being done, I guess, I'm trying to remember the regulations, whether it has to be done third party or it can be done in-house. But they're the people who go out and check the poles, the integrity, the tolerances, the clearance, that kind of stuff, and basically do safety wellness checks, if you would. You're going to get usually training directly from the utilities themselves. I know a guy here in town who does that, and he's got a nice little gig driving around his little white pickup truck and going up and getting a ladder out every so often and going up. Actually, they were flying drones recently. That was interesting. 75 to 100,000 on that one. Rail car track inspector. Again, this is something we see a lot. I live in Livingston, Montana. It's a train town. That's what built the town and what still is the primary employer in the town. They're inspecting railway tracks, you're inspecting cars, you're inspecting safety systems, lights, switches, all that kind of stuff. There's federal regulations, you need FRA or company training on it. It's one of those ones where you have to be in the industry to get into the job, but once you do, it's a good solid job, good benefits. Starting pays around 75, goes up to about 120. And it's one of those jobs that once somebody gets it, they usually stay in it for a lifetime kind of thing. Uh, and then wind and turbine. I smirk because of the whole thing with turbines and whatnot. Anyway, someone's got to go out and inspect those things. Now, if you don't mind heights, this might be the job for you. You're evaluating the mechanical, electrical systems in wind farms. This is, you're going to have to live someplace that is, well, kind of windy. California's got a bunch of them. I know Texas has got some down south. They got a bunch up in Canada. They've been putting them everywhere. You're going to need an industry-based cert for that, and probably something something that's recognized at the federal level, because you're going to be working with a lot of power systems, and probably a security background check as well. But you're looking at a starting pay of 75 to 85,000, and overtime like you would not believe. All right, you're just going to be raking it in. I know guys doing this who are getting close to 200,000 a year. Granted, they work in Canada, and that's not Canadian. That's U.S. dollars. Anyway, then the next one is transportation, environmental, and specialized inspectors. First one is aviation maintenance inspector. They have to go over the aircraft, make sure that they're hitting all their maintenance dates. The whole thing with aircraft is you don't wait for something to break. You have scheduled, like this thing's done X amount of hours, it's coming out. It may get rebuilt or something, but it's coming out and it's getting replaced, and that has to happen. And they are federal regulations that say that you have to meet the manufacturer's specified guidelines or your own, because there's a lot of rules about aviation, but you have this whole list of this has to be done by then, and then it has to be signed off on. You're going to need your A&P license plus an FAA cert for this. Starting pay though is getting close to 100,000 and then you're quickly going to get up to 125. Guys who've been doing it a long time can easily do 150 on this. All right, next we got vehicle emissions testers. Yeah, these are smog guys. Not an issue here in Montana, all right? But they test vehicles for safety and emissions compliance. You have to do a state level certified training for it. But after that, it's a money pump. If you can get the thing is you need a physical location to do it at. But the turnover at these places is pretty high. But it's good money. It's not, considering that you have to be a little bit mechanical. You go and get your cert, and you're at $60K just off the start. Probably caps out under 90, because again, it's high turnover rate, and there's always somebody else looking to get in that position. Again, only good in states where there's smog. Not here in Montana. We don't do that game. Then environmental compliance inspector monitors pollution, waste, air quality. What's coming out of the pipes, what you're doing with your chemicals. Are the chemicals being handled correctly? Are they being disposed of correctly? They've got to sign off on it. Usually, this is one that honestly, I think from what I've seen, usually requires some sort of degree. I think I've seen where it's an associate's degree versus a full bachelor's degree, but there are then tech certs on top of that. Again, state-based and EPA-based. As such, starting pay is going to be around 75 to 85,000, going up to around 125 to 150, depending on the region and what kind of stuff you're dealing with. If you're dealing with runoff from a car wash versus, trying to get rid of magnesium chloride. If you need some magnesium chloride, email me. I got about 2,000 gallons of it. Don't ask me how. The bridge structural inspectors. Now, this is pretty high end. All right, you're going to be examining bridges and structures for damage, general maintenance, wear and tear. You're going to be working with DOT or have an engineering tech background on that one. This one really is going to require more training. Oddly enough, though, it doesn't pay more than a lot of the other ones. Again, you're in that 80 to 120 kind of range. OSHA workplace safety inspector. Everyone loves it when the OSHA guy shows up, right? Checks industrial and construction sites for safety compliance. You have to have OSHA training or related degree, and you get to be the person that everyone hates. Starting pay is usually around 75, goes up to around 120 to 145, depending on the area. But again, it's one of those jobs that once you get it, you'd pretty much have to murder someone to lose that job. And even then, they might overlook it depending on what deadlines and stuff are coming up. All right. Now, so that's your trade adjacent inspector, version, if you would. Now, one thing I will say is this: some of the key takeaways. A lot of times, you can start at the job as an assistant at a much lower. We're talking 55, 45, maybe 65,000, again, depending on the region. If you're doing this in SoCal versus like doing this in Indiana, there's going to be a big pay discrepancy, okay? The other thing is, once you get in there, once you get your foot in the door, work really hard to get that CERT, because as soon as you get that CERT, you're looking at, I want to say on average, a $20,000 to $25,000 pay bump immediately. All right, immediately they're gonna, as soon as you get it, they're happy to pay it, because that means they can bill more. Okay. The other thing I'm gonna say is get your Part 107 drone license if you want to do some easy work. And I say that from experience. There's mine. All right, FAA. I won a couple bar bets. Yeah, I'm a certified pilot, drone pilot. Still says pilot. Still says FAA. But the point is, if you want to make money with a drone, you have to have your Part 107. And there's all sorts of other little jobs and stuff you can do, but inspections are a huge, huge one. If they can pay you to fly a drone up and take a look at a mast antenna, a water tower, a roof or something like that, and they don't have to send somebody up on the roof, they don't have to pay that extra level of insurance, they'll do it 9 times out of 10. All right. And you will just be, cashing checks left and right if you get your drone cert on top of the other certifications that you need to do these kinds of inspections. Okay. I think it's definitely one of the most overlooked, just dang easy kind of jobs out there. You could literally sit in your car and do your work as long as you can maintain, line of sight. I used to do them. I get a folding camp chair out, set it down, put my ball cap on down low to get rid of the glare, get my screen up there, and go to town. It's a fun job. Anyway, I could go on about that for a long time. If you got some other kind of categories of trade adjacent, I know we talk a lot about the trades. I think we've kind of beat that one to death for a while, but trade adjacent jobs, if there's other questions you have, let me know down in the comments. Maybe we'll do another video like this. Anyway, if you like what we do, go ahead and chomp the old like button, smash that subscribe, ring the bell on the way out. You all take care, God bless, and as always, shine on.